I like to take things apart. I was always, taking apart telephones, radios, televisions, sort of anything electronic I could get my hands on. Like to kind of see how it worked, and sometimes I'd put them back together too. But I was mostly interested in understanding how things worked. Yeah, I wanted to see how it worked, so I took it apart. And good thing about the early personal computers is that they had completely kind of standardized chips, and so you could literally get a book about each chip and read what each pin did and how signals were processed through the chip, and you could design your own circuits and you could modify them, and you could literally see exactly how the thing was working. And that was sort of the classroom for me. That was where I learned the basics of how these things worked. And then it kind of became fascinated with, well, how could you improve it? How could you make it do more things? How could you expand it? How could you make it go faster? How could you hook it up to other computers and sort of let your imagination run wild? When I was in the seventh grade, I was in an advanced math class. And in my math teacher's classroom at the junior high school I went to, they got the first teletype terminal at the school. And this was, of course, before personal computers, and basically you could like write a program and send it off to a big mainframe, the answer would come back. And I became kind of, fascinated with this idea of a computing machine. I thought that was pretty cool. And so I would sort of program this teletype terminal, and sort of learned all I could about computers. My mother was, a financial consultant, so she was sort of, immersed in the world of stocks and bonds, and I kind of became interested in, currencies and interest rates, and what was going on with commodity prices, and kind of an odd thing for a 13-year-old to be doing, but I kind of found it interesting, and would sort of read reports, and started playing around and investing in things, and found that whole idea fascinating. When I was 16, I got this job working for a newspaper in Houston. And my job was to sell subscriptions to the paper on the telephone. And I realized two things when I was doing this. I realized that people that were buying the newspaper generally had two things in common. Either they were moving to a new residence, or they were getting married. And it turns out that you could go find information about both of those things in enormous quantities. So in the state that I lived in Texas, when you want to get a marriage license, you have to file with the state, and it's public information, particularly the address that you want the license sent to once it's issued. So I hired all my friends and went to every county in the surrounding 16 counties in Houston, captured the addresses of all the people that applied for marriage licenses, and sent them a direct mail offer to offer them the newspaper for a free trial and then a subscription. And ended up making a fair sum of money for a teenager. This is way back in the beginning of the industry when personal computers didn't even have hard disk drives. And so, we made a business where we would, buy controller chips and cables and write some software and buy hard disks, and we would make kits so you could upgrade your computer to have a hard disk drive. So we were making an enormous number of these kits, like hundreds and thousands of these kits. And we needed computers to format the hard disk drives. So we kind of designed a really basic computer to format the hard drives. And we're busy formatting hard drives. And I remember we had this customer from Martin Marietta who came to see us and he goes, I want to buy 150 of these hard disk drives. We're like, oh my God, we don't have ties. I mean, our office is not really a place you would want to go and see at the time. And so we got to clean the place up. And so I'm showing this guy around and he's going to buy these disk drives, kits. And he goes, what are those computers you have? Oh, those are the computers to format the hard drives. Well, can we buy those? Good idea. We were so busy formatting these hard drives. We never really thought about that. So about a week later, there was this like Austin Computer Fair in the downtown kind of Coliseum type thing. And by that time, we were sort of the biggest seller of computer stuff in Austin. So we had like the biggest booth right in the center. And so we made this computer in a few days and got a case and sort of brought it to the show. When you look at the complete balance of, how fast do our customers pay us, and how fast do we pay our suppliers, and how much inventory do we have, the net of all that is that we actually, collect money, way before, we pay the money out, and so that's a beautiful thing. And in fact, it allows a company to grow very quickly because you have sort of negative working capital. And so we didn't require lots of capital. We weren't as efficient then as we are now, but we were able to grow quite rapidly without a ton of capital. Now we were growing at such enormous rates, we needed some capital because we needed some buildings and we needed some infrastructure. And so we got a little bit of capital. We got a credit line, and we eventually did a private placement and went public in 1988 on NASDAQ, and attracted some capital so we could expand around the world and continue growing. We kind of went off for a few days with some of the really smart people in the company and a few outside advisors, and we said, well, what are we going to do with this company? I mean, this thing's really growing fast, but we're in a business that's pretty competitive and expanding rapidly. What do we do? So we kind of had three strategies that we clued in on as our growth path for the future. First one we said was, you got to go outside the U.S. because 96% of the people in the world live outside the United States, and it's going to be at least half the opportunities outside the United States, and you can't just be a domestic company. Second thing we said was, we really want to go after large companies because they underwrite their purchase of technology through productivity, and they can afford the best tools. And that's, we know, is going to be a lucrative opportunity, and we really want to go after that in a big way. Kind of a odd thing for a little company like ours to go after, particularly with IBM and others, in the field. The third thing we said was, differentiating our business is going to be really key, and the way to do that is on service. And you've got to have, better service than a competitor. So we invented this idea of on-site service for the PC, which had really never been done before. And so with those three strategies, we kind of marched forward, and that, that lasted 5 or 6 years. In the spring of '86, we went to the Comdex trade show, which was at the time like the biggest trade show in the industry. And we had a 12 megahertz 286 computer. And at the time, the fastest computer from IBM was a 6 megahertz 286 computer. So ours was twice as fast. Their computer was $39.95, and ours was $19.95. So ours was twice as fast and cost half as much. We didn't have any problem selling them. I mean, There was an interesting twist, though. There were two really long lines of people at our booth. There were all the people who said, I want to run AutoCAD or DBase, and how can I get one of these things really quickly? This is fantastic. And then there were all the press who were kind of wondering, why in the world would anyone ever need a 12 megahertz 286? We already have 6 megahertz, and we know 8 megahertz is coming. Those are plenty fast, okay? Compared to today, of course, children's toys have faster microprocessors than the machines we were selling then. The way this would work is let's say you went to computer land. There used to be such things in the United States and around every street corner, and you bought a computer and it didn't work. Well, you'd put it back in the car and you'd go there and fix this thing and come back, a week or so later and they'd give it to you. So our idea was that you'd call us on the phone and say, hey, my computer's not working, and we'd come the very next day and fix it. And turns out there were all sorts of third-party companies that had field service networks, companies like Xerox, for example, who had all these technicians all over the country who were kind of waiting for copiers to fail, and so they had this fixed capacity, and so we could buy up that excess capacity at way less cost than we could put it in ourselves, and instantly have way better service. And actually, Xerox is the company we used for quite some time in that. When a customer would call us and say, hey, something's wrong with my computer, the interesting thing is that about 85 or 90% of the time, we could solve that problem actually right on the phone. So we didn't actually have to send the technician, but when we did, we kind of knew exactly what the problem was, and we could very accurately sort of fix it the very next day. And then we've obviously advanced it. Now we have 2-hour service and 4-hour service, for kind of mission critical installations. Some of our customers say, hey, I want to have somebody like there all the time for 24/7. Do that too. So it becomes many different types of service offerings. Services is a really important part of our business that continues to evolve, particularly as we create more and more complicated products. Customer isn't so much interested in all the bits and bytes and how fast is the computer and what does it do. They want to know that this installation of a critical system that they're putting inside their business is really going to work well. So they're looking for a solution. And so we have to know a lot about their business, and we have to really be able to consult with them and tailor a solution that meets their needs. I think you have to be able to experiment and make mistakes, and I find the question a bit perplexing in the sense that if you really don't know what it means to be an entrepreneur, maybe you aren't one. So I think there's a bit of kind of self-initiative and self-starter that is incredibly important part of entrepreneurship. I mean, no one can sort of tell you how to do it. You have to sort of have an instinctual, feeling or an idea about something, and you got to be passionate about it. I mean, I think people that look for great ideas to make money, aren't nearly as successful as those who say, okay, what do I really love to do? What am I excited about? What do I know something about? What's kind of interesting and compelling?